Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is Astral Projectors in the Closet. Before we get started, I want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support the work of Astral Club and spreading astral projection and knowledge about it in the community, you can do so. You get no commercials when you join, and also advanced videos on Sunday and an email where we can talk back and forth and you can share your experiences and I could answer some of your questions. If you're interested, there'll be a link in the description. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like to learn to astral project or you already project and just want to increase the quality and quantity of your projections, I'd be glad to work with you. And you'll find an email where you can request more information about lessons in the description as well. Now, in this episode, I'm going to discuss astral projection and how you share the information, if you share the information, when you share the information, and the various different circumstances where you may or may not wish to share knowledge about your interest in astral projection. And I'd very much like to know in the comments section whether you have told anyone about your interest in astral projection. And if so, who have you told and why perhaps do you keep the information secret in your life? Okay, astral projection. Now, this is a safe space. Astral Club is designed as a safe space where people who astral project or people who just have interest in astral projection can come, can learn about the topic in a safe way, interact with others who have similar interests in a safe way. Now, to us, astral projection, the ability to leave one's body and travel in the astral and time and space and what have you, it becomes somewhat commonplace because we feel comfortable talking about it on this particular channel. But to many people out there, although it is improving, more knowledge is getting out there, but to a lot of people, it's still a strange topic. It's one that is controversial and has incited controversy periodically throughout the world and throughout history. Now, I'm not going to get into a lot of history, just a little bit, but let's talk about the whole business about being in the closet. Now, the term itself has an interesting origin to it. Going back to the 20s and the 30s of the 20th century, there was a term coming out, and that was usually for well-bred, especially Southern belles, young women who would be introduced in these coming out balls where they would be introduced to society as a young woman who, is currently perhaps looking for a match, and she's being formally introduced into her society as a whole. No longer a child, but now a young woman, an adult. And I think the term coming out was figuring very high in the minds of, and this is something interesting because I had never heard about it, but I read about it when I started doing some research on this. Apparently, coming out became associated with the homosexual or gay community going back to the 20s and the 30s, where in large cities there were drag balls where homosexual men would dress up in drag and they would come out to others in that community as a way of announcing that, yes, they are at least willing to come out as gay men in a safe space surrounded by others of a similar orientation. In the closet, though, or coming out of the closet, really had more of an origin in the starting in the '60s. Although it's a little tough to hit it exactly. And in this sense, it was talking about gays who were hiding or felt a need, very real need, to hide who and what they were for fear of persecution. And this persecution was very real in society. As a matter of fact, homosexuality was listed in the psychiatric manuals into the '90s, I believe. And so society as a whole did not look kindly on people who were homosexual. Certainly, there was discrimination, not only in society as a whole, but at various workplaces. So there was very good reasons for them to hide, perhaps in the closet, and have two different personalities. One where they would share with fellow gay men, and another one where they would act straight in a world that did not and did not look kindly upon people who strayed outside of what was considered the norm. All of this was prompted by a question that was asked to me by one of my new patrons, and her name is Elise. And she said, "Hey, Rick, very recently I started painting, and when I remote view and I do meditation, I want to use those talents, those abilities, to present myself as a spiritual or astral artist. I still haven't figured out the best term. But honestly, I'm afraid that explaining the source of my work will label and isolate me from other people. They may think I'm crazy. Do you have any advice on being open with your spiritual beliefs? And by the way, it's okay with me if you share this question on YouTube." So, that certainly got me thinking. And as I said, the whole in the closet thing is something that resonated with me. And I would be very not surprised if many of you also resonated with that basic idea of hiding something, a part of yourself, in this case, astral projection, from those around you. And I mentioned some of the homosexual or gay sources of coming out of the closet. You can even go back to the early Christians. Now, certainly now, what we're talking about is being an early Christian, especially during various periods of time, was very dangerous. It was considered a hostile cult. It was considered a group of people, many of which were slaves in the lower classes of society, who, quite frankly, the powerful were already suspicious of due to the worry of slave revolts and other societal problems that the rich were worried about the poor acting up and causing trouble in their carefully controlled government. So these Christians, there was a lot of rumors about them. There was rumors that they were cannibals, that they ate flesh and they drank blood, which of course was rumors that were associated with the Christian sacrament of remembering Christ by taking part in a communion, in which of course you drank wine and ate bread in remembrance of Jesus. And I don't want to get into all the different beliefs associated, whether transubstantiation, whether the wine and the bread actively turned into the blood and the body of Christ. All that did, though, was cause rumor. I mean, imagine that type of belief being communicated a couple different people away from the actual Christian community. And you can, of course, find a situation where the people, these early Christians, were labeled as undesirable individuals. And they were also hit for their lack of patriotism because, much like school children pledge allegiance to the U.S. flag, burning a pinch of incense and saying Caesar is Lord was the ancient Roman citizen way of pledging allegiance. It was a way of affirming the governmental order. And Christians were forbidden from doing that. So not only were they suspected of all kinds of bizarre practices, but here they are presenting as folks who aren't patriotic and a possible threat to the Roman emperor and the empire in and of itself. So they were persecuted and certainly killed, and there was a very good reason for them, therefore, to be secretive. They would use the fish sign, or the ichthys, which symbolized fishermen. Many of the early apostles were fishermen. And also, Jesus famously said that he would make these men fishers of men. In other words, people who would find converts and change them into different people who subscribe to a different set of beliefs. At any rate, they used this sign as a way to kind of a dog whistle, as a way to indicate to other Christians that they were a Christian. And this was all necessary, once again, because of persecution. Now let's take it to the present. And, I'll talk about myself as an example. And then we'll get into my answer to Elise about her question about whether she should come out as a spiritual or astral artist, and what I thought. There's three basic areas that I believe are typically areas that we as humans have to deal with, and that's family, friends, and work. And I think if you really consider for a minute that in many cases you're a different person with your family and your friends than you are at work. Many people they change who they are, at least on the surface, to fit in with these various groupings. So it's very common just for everyone to be different, amongst their family than perhaps they are with their friends, and certainly how they act at work. Now, I have shared in the past that when I was a young child, I considered my astral projections as something that I thought everyone did. And as a young child, certainly before I went to school, I had no problem sharing some of my experiences with my parents. It seemed like an obvious thing to do. I had an interesting experience and I would tell them about it. They would often label it as a dream, and I then labeled them as a dream. Although as I got a little older, I started seeing distinct differences in my special dreams and normal dreaming, the types of dreams that everyone seemed to have. Talking with my brother and my sister and other friends in the neighborhood, it seemed like my special dreams were different, but I still didn't see any problem with sharing them sometimes with others. However, when I started going to school and I shared some experiences in those early days, I would get strange looks, and I would have people accusing me of lying, of making up stories. So, I learned pretty quickly that it was best to keep my special dreaming to myself and not tell anyone. Uh, and that was something that followed me throughout my life. Eventually, I stopped talking with my parents as well. When I overheard them talking about possibly sending me to a psychologist because of these strange experiences I was reporting about leaving my body and, flying about the neighborhood and seeing things and various people. And that caused me to get more secretive as well. I kept these experiences to myself and my secret journal over the years. When I got to college, I felt a little bit more comfortable. I recall going to this meeting. There was this group that was allowed to present at my class. And I'm not going to mention the name of them because I consider it a somewhat controlling cult. So I don't want to advertise them. However, they talked a lot about you can leave your body, and that obviously attracted my attention. So I went ahead and went to a meeting or two. And there I met a young lady who was also a freshman in my college. And talking with her in this a little bit more safe space of a group of people who were interested in this topic, I shared with her my abilities, and she shared with me hers. And we ended up dating, and she was my girlfriend in college. And we had some projections actually together as well. After I graduated from college, uh, the military, the Air Force, for instance, was not the type of organization that is typically associated with liberal beliefs. It's typically very conservative. And certainly when I was there, it was very Christian oriented. And as someone who was part of the Human Reliability Program, which was the name of the program that the Air Force used to make sure that folks involved in nuclear weapons were reliable and were not psychologically ill in any way. And I could certainly understand the reason for that program. You want to make sure individuals who have that particular duty are not erratic or suffering from any psychological or other diseases that could impact upon their ability to perform their function. And so certainly I kept those beliefs and my astral projections to myself, because if I had shared them, I believe there would be a significant chance that I would have been eliminated by the Human Reliability Program due to what perhaps a psychologist would have termed a variety of psychological illnesses, which would have disqualified me. Now, obviously, I did not then, and I do not now believe that astral projection is in any way, shape, or form a psychological illness, but I was aware enough to know that that opinion would most likely not be shared by the U.S. Air Force. Afterwards, entering the world, and I went to Robert Monroe's center in Virginia, and attended some of the classes there on astral projection. And then after that, I would begin offering classes in astral projection as well as private lessons. So, on that limited basis, you could say that I was coming out of the closet to some degree, at least enough to train others interested in the topic. After my daughter was born, I stopped doing lessons and classes and poured myself into my work. I continued to astral project, but I really didn't talk about it on average with people outside of my immediate family. And for instance, my daughter and my wife have always been extremely supportive. And as a matter of fact, when I later on met my wife, I let her know right away about my abilities because I needed to gauge her to make sure that I could be open with her because there's no way I'm going to conceal an important part of myself from my wife. And she, was very open to those types of spiritual beliefs, as she had many similar beliefs herself. My daughter, as she grew up, certainly I spoke with her as well, and she is always been very supportive of me as well, and has had several projections now herself. About 3 years ago, I decided to come on YouTube and open myself up and my knowledge to a much wider array of people. However, I started really on Reddit, on the Astral Projection subreddit, which was, for the most part, a very friendly and very welcoming environment for talking about astral projection. And that's what led me to having the Astral Club channel that, of course, Astral Club became. So that was my family experience. With friends, there was similar situations where I would share with some who I sensed were more open, and then there were others where I certainly concealed it. Work was a major area for me. Typically, I kept it to myself. Uh, in my work of managing others in business, uh, the people that I associated with, certainly those who were above me, tended to be conservative individuals. I think in general, business and higher echelons in business and management tends to attract people who are a bit more on the conservative side. Uh, Not to mention, as someone who was entrusted with multi-million-dollar business and managing of others, I felt that I could not afford to set myself up for possible ridicule by talking about my astral projections, because certainly that belief would not have been openly embraced, and it would have undercut my ability to do my job. That is, just a little bit about what I've been through in my basic areas. And I think you'll find for yourself that there's no pat answer as to whether you should come all the way out of the closet, partially out of the closet, across the board. I think you're going to find that, astral projection is gradually becoming more and more well known. There's been some movies and some music that has alluded to it over the years. And I think more and more people are being exposed to it. However, there still is a very strong conservative streak. For instance, in the Christian community, especially the more traditional Christianity. I'm not talking about Unitarians. I mean, yeah, they'll be open to every darn thing. But if you are a member, or if your family is a member of a more traditional religion like traditional Christianity, or I imagine traditional Islam, and some other fairly conservative religions, that you might want to be very careful about who you talk to, who subscribes to these beliefs. Now, I have talked in the past, and I firmly believe that there is nothing about astral projection that should be a threat, or should cause problems for any religion. However, there has been a lot of misinformation out there, and there are people who have wrongly associated astral projection with forbidden occult practices. Now we know that astral projection is really just an ability that mankind has had from the very beginning. And we've gone through a variety of phases and of opening to knowledge. And I think societies in general are becoming more knowledgeable, becoming more open. But you have to ask yourself, if you're going to be open to your family, what are their religious beliefs, if any? If there's someone who's a member of one of these traditional religions, you could very much upset them and cause a problem in your own relationship with them. Much like gay people today, and certainly extremely so in the past, have to make that judgment as to whether their family, friends, their work relationships are worth risking by talking about this portion of themselves, whether they be gay or whether they're someone who astral projects and doesn't wish to be subjected to any kind of prejudice or persecution based on this ability. And unfortunately, in some of these traditional religions, some of these practices are misunderstood as evil or demonic, and that causes a problem. Your friends, I would hope that your friends are a little bit more open minded, because you can choose your friends. You can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends. And so I would hope that you cultivate people as close friends who are more open to ideas like astral projection. Uh, Otherwise, why are they your close friends? I mean, it seems to me that hiding who you are or a major portion of yourself from the friends that you have chosen is a little, is a little just kind of self abuse. Why are you doing that to yourself? It doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, work, I understand. Believe me, I personally understand that you have to think twice, three times, four times before you talk about astral projection at work. I mean, part of me says that it's really no one's business at your work. You're there to do a specific job. Now, it's natural, in certain cases, especially when you work somewhere for a long time, and depending on the atmosphere, whether you work for a large company, whether you work for a small company, sometimes there's almost a family environment in some small companies, and people in those environments often share information about themselves, their lives, their family lives, and that certainly is something that you can do, and many people do. However, in this case, I would be very cautious, especially if you're in a position that where you're a professional, or whether you are a manager over a group of people, whether who your boss is. Is your boss someone who is open, or is he someone who's fairly conservative? Uh, I think in those cases, you might want to say to yourself, look, it's no one else's business. I'm here to do a job. I'm going to do that job. And I'm not going to talk about my personal life, or at least I'm not going to talk about the controversial areas of my personal life, like astral projection. And that way you can preserve your working life, your working relationships, and indeed your own position, by keeping that information secret. However, everyone has to make that decision for themselves. No one, not myself, and not a family member of yours, not a friend of yours, and not a work mate of yours, can tell you how and to what degree you should share this portion of yourself. Because we still do exist in a world that where astral projection, just like being gay, is there's a world now that's much more open to these things, especially in the West, because I'm speaking about the West now. In other areas of the world, you can get in a lot of trouble for being gay. Heck, you can get in a lot of trouble for talking about astral projection in certain countries, especially some countries in Africa. You might be accused as a witch. And certainly, coming out as gay can threaten your freedom and your life in certain countries, and certain countries in Africa, for instance, as well. So you have to think carefully, and it's certainly not my place to tell you what to do. I just wanted to talk about this issue, talk about some of the areas of my life. Now, I'd like to answer Elisa's question now, and I'll share with you the information that I shared with her. Now, recall, she is someone who is an artist and is interested in coming out as a spiritual artist, an astral artist. And she was asking my advice as to whether she should be open. If so, what degree, with her spiritual beliefs. So this is my response. Hi, Elise. Your question is not one that I can easily answer for you. People interested in astral projection live in two worlds, the physical and the spiritual. We each must decide whether we feel comfortable joining these worlds together and the effects such a melding would have on our family, friends, and workplaces. In one sense, it is no one's business but your own as to your spiritual beliefs or lack thereof. However, as an artist, your life is closely aligned with your work, and separating the two may be impossible, or at least very unwieldy. The average person can live their daily lives and conceal their spirituality relatively easily. But an artist, especially one who aspires to be a spiritual artist, will either have to openly share their beliefs with others or must self-censor their creativity for life. I would not wish such a stifled life on my worst enemy, much less on a kind and talented young woman. Ultimately, you will need to decide whether you can allow your true self and work to be revealed to a complicated world. I wish you all the best and look forward to hearing from you soon. Please share with me and others in Astral Club your thoughts on this topic. Are you out of the spiritual closet? If so, to whom? Or in what areas do you currently hide your interest in astral projection? I'm very interested. And if you liked this video, please hit the like button, share it with those of like mind, subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, make sure you hit that bell so you're notified when the Wednesday at 2 o'clock and the Saturday at 8:15 a.m. videos are posted. Of course, that is Eastern time or New York City time here in the United States. And as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.